Well, thank you, Jorunn, for that wonderful introduction. And good morning, everyone. Great to see friends, colleagues, fellow fighters in the struggle for global justice. Both people in the room and all the people that are following online. And thanks also to Vanessa for reminding us of the stark realities that is the contrast and the context that we are meeting in. We are meeting here today to talk about some of the most important challenges of our time against a quite stark backdrop. We are aware of the climate crisis. We are aware of the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, we are aware of the consequences of the war in Ukraine. These interlinked crises come together to disrupt the global order to an extent that I think was unprecedented and that has shifted the focus and the optimism that at least I had before all this came about, when we saw indicators for sustainable development goals and progress moving maybe not as fast as we wanted to, or as evenly, but at least moving somewhat in the right direction. As we are meeting now, we know that we are not making the necessary progress to meet our shared goals. But I do believe that we can get back on track. But that will require an extraordinary effort, financially, yes, but above all, politically. Within our reshaped geopolitical reality, where again, the challenges that we are facing are increasingly interconnected. And we must ensure that while we address the current and the acute crises, we do not lose sight of our long-term perspective. The topic for this year's conference is very timely because, and as we've been reminded already, if we look at the past, much of the progress that we have achieved has come at a price. And the concerns that Vanessa articulated so clearly, I think, are well taken and very rightfully articulated. But ladies and gentlemen, we are facing some dilemmas, and I'd like to see if we can move forward on some of those. How do we end poverty and share prosperity when war is raging in our own neighborhood and fragility, conflict, and violence escalate around the globe? Can we continue the fight against inequality and poverty while ensuring that we also keep global consumption under control and at a sustainable level? Can we safeguard our funding for long-term development when the global humanitarian needs are dramatically increasing? The simple answer is that we don't have a choice, we have to do it. But it won't be easy. And there are a few important topics that I would like to touch on and talk a little bit about how we see us moving forward. First of all, moving ahead, we need to recognize the links between climate and development. The documentation for this conference has demonstrated those links very, very clearly, and we need to articulate those and make sure that we really bring climate policy and development policy together. Climate change is having a direct adverse effect on development. If we fail to deliver on the Paris Agreement, efforts to enhance global prosperity and welfare will become much more difficult. Global efforts to reduce poverty and inequality must go hand in hand with efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and building climate-robust societies. You may remember at the COP26 in Glasgow, Norway committed to double our climate finance from 7 billion Norwegian kroner to 14 billion by the year 2026. And we also commit to redress the imbalance between the financing that exists for mitigation and the finance that exists for adaptation. So within our increase in climate finance, we are going to increase financing for adaptation even more. Because the climate crisis, as we heard vividly from Turkana earlier and other places, is very much a reality in the areas where we work. Now, the world has several COPs. The other COP that took place in December related to the Convention on Biodiversity. Norway committed to a new global biodiversity framework. What does that mean? It means that we have committed to protecting 30% of the world's land and water by the year 2030. This is really, really important because we are, I think, increasingly realizing how biodiversity forms the very basis of our existence. A healthy natural environment secures medicine, economic growth, a stable climate, water and food. And food security is a main development policy priority for this government from day one. It has also, because of the, not least because of the war in Ukraine, has moved to the top of the international agenda. The circumstances are dramatic. I think it's dramatic when we know that the number of people who were food insecure, number of people who went to bed hungry every night, we were going down for a while. We were doing well. But over the last few years, those curves have turned, and the number of people who are food insecure sounds so clinical, but who are food insecure, who go to bed hungry, is increasing. But there may be a silver lining. What we do see is increased global awareness around the systems that are not helping us to provide food and increase food security globally, but at least and particularly in low middle income countries. And with increased global awareness and resources, we do have a unique opportunity to transform the international food system, tackling climate change mitigation and adaptation in an integrated way. We recently launched a new strategy on food security. I see faces in the room who helped us develop that strategy, where we recognize the importance of small-scale food producers as a key to achieve sustainable food production. But realizing the right to food is not just a matter of improving productivity. We also need to increase access by supporting well-functioning local value chains. We need to ensure food in the belly and money in the pocket. And we believe the development potential for African agriculture is significant. And so is the potential of renewable energy. We got very specific challenges from the first speaker here today. And again, after nearly a decade of steady progress on electricity access in sub-Saharan Africa, the number of people without access is now increasing. So basically the curves are again pointing in the wrong direction. And we know that electricity powers development. While we need to provide access to those hundreds of millions of people who lack electricity, we also need to cut emissions. So that means that we need to transform the energy sector to meet climate targets and cut emissions, while bringing electricity to homes and businesses. And as a global energy leader, Norway is committed to do what is needed. We provide grants for low and middle income countries, particularly in the African region, where we find severe energy poverty. We share our experience in managing and developing the renewable energy sector. We work closely with like-minded donors and development partners to scale up investments in renewable energy and in mobilizing private capital for renewable energy investments. Our aim is a just transition towards a renewable, circular, and sustainable future, And the only way to get there is to work in partnership between governments, industry, businesses, civil society. But we also need financing. And my friends, I think you know how to spell development finance. Spell development finance, T-A-X. And as everyone in this room very well knows, Norway, we know about tax and taxation. And we use this knowledge to support domestic resource mobilization in low and middle income countries. The Norwegian experience has taught us it's not enough just to collect taxes. We also need good systems to ensure that taxes collected are used to promote welfare and to reduce inequalities, in turn also supporting and developing that all-important trust between government and citizens. So that's the sort of positive side of talking about finance. But the other side of the finance discussion is how we deal with the dirty money. Funds that are stolen from welfare and development through tax evasion, through corruption, and other illicit financial flows. Unfortunately, the global ecosystem of hidden beneficiaries, complicit service providers, secrecy jurisdictions, and impunity is very robust. We do need to combat corruption and tax evasion based on the fundamental values of transparency, accountability, integrity, and inclusion. We will do our part in the lead-up to the next global conference on financing for development. And many here will remember the last conference on financing for development in Addis Ababa in 2015. There is a decision now to plan for another Financing for Development conference in 2025. In the lead-up to that, we will ensure that combating illicit financial flows, tax evasion, and corruption remains at the top of the United Nations and the multilateral development agenda. How do we do that? Well, we work with governments, we work at the country level, we work at the multilateral level, and not least, we work with our very important partners in civil society as well as in the business sector. So friends, the theme of this year's conference is human nature. Background documentation that we've seen has provided ample evidence of the risks that we are facing. We know that we are not on track to achieve our global action plan, the Sustainable Development Goals. We are also acutely aware that, as always, crises and problems affect those furthest behind the most. Women, young people, people with disabilities, and the list is long. The Norwegian government is aware of our responsibility. We aim not just to alleviate the immediate risks, but to support transformation towards more just and equal societies in partnership with nature. Because as Vanessa reminded us earlier today, this is all about people. Thank you.